Lonesome Lands podcast, Lonesome Report. We still need, every time I do this, I'm like, I need an intro. I need a fancy intro. October 7th, 2025. Thanks to everybody who's subscribed and bought merch. This episode is brought to you by everybody that goes to lonesomelands.com. Click on support and helps us out. All right, what's in the news today? I guess first thing, Shad's making videos promoting our podcast. Says we record every Monday morning. So I feel like I should clear that up. I don't know that we've ever recorded once on a Monday morning.
We recorded on Monday last week. What are you talking
No,
about?
we didn't. It didn't come out till Friday last week.
Oh yeah.
We recorded like Thursday night.
It was supposed to be recorded Monday morning. I'm just saying
we
do it
for sure. We should.
Yeah, we should.
And maybe we plan on it, but it
We
never
do.
happened.
Well,
I don't know the last time we ever did. Anyway,
we'll do
it's
better.
what's today? Tuesday.
Today's Tuesday.
And it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So there's a chance that it'll be out on Wednesday. Because I probably won't get it all done tonight. Anyway.
You won't have to edit this one. Let's just go.
I need to edit. How far are we in right now? We haven't said anything. Screwworm. There's a screwworm update. I'm so sick of hearing and talking about the screwworm. Who cares? It's in Mexico. It hasn't made it up here yet. Shad, you talk about it, I guess.
Well, the big deal is that one of the leaders of one of the Mexican Cattlemen's Association has been putting out that, they had made a deal with the United States to open the border in November. So that gossip got to spreading around. And it was after the last announcement of the screwworm, which was in Nueva, what is it? Nueva Leon, which is a Mexican state just south of Texas. And
that's
that was
Spanish for New Leon.
Okay. Well, it was said that they found this 70 miles south of the border. And then they were like, yeah, we're making deals. So everybody gets excited and there's lots of gossip going around and none of it's true. None of it is true. They are not opening the border. And then yesterday, Secretary Rollins comes out and says, hey, we've got another screwworm in Nueva Leon, 170 miles south of the border. This individual animal came in on a shipment of cattle. Apparently, the protocols from point of origin had been adhered to. Ivermectin was placed in or on the cattle, and
where'd you get all that info?
In the Reuters article.
Okay.
And the larvae were dying. So that's good. And the Minister of Agriculture in Mexico, which would be the same as Secretary Rollins in the United States, he's the one that reported it. So hopefully that's a sign that our relationship is getting better in terms of the New World screwworm, because I know they got a lot of cattle that they want to get across the border and they're going to figure out how to do it one way or another. I did attend a meeting last week on the New World screwworm. It was based in South Texas. I attended it via Zoom. The people that were the most affected or most emotional in the room probably were the hunters. And I get that. The hunting on the border is huge.
So what did they say in their emotional pleas?
They're just so worried about the wildlife coming down with it. And of course, a lot of those are high fence ranches, and they have spent millions and millions of dollars on these very expensive deer. And it's not just deer, sheep, all kinds of animals.
What's that crazy animal you got in Texas, like South Texas? It looks like a mix of antelope and elk and
yeah, there's all kinds of exotics. I don't know what they are. I'm not a hunter, and I'm very pro hunting, but I'm not a hunter, so I don't know. But they are very worried about it. So the state, as the state comes together, they're like, we've got to help the federal government figure this out. Listen, the biggest push right now is the Edinburgh screwworm fly facility. That has to be done quicker than it's getting done, because that's really the only way to push the fly back to the south in towards the Darien Gap. So I appreciate Secretary Rollins sending more people down there, even with the federal government being shut down. There are more tick riders, more traps, more research happening right now, even with the government shutdown. So I appreciate that. And I do appreciate the Mexican government kind of cooperating finally. That's why I went to Washington, D.C. To sit on the U.S. Mexico Trade Policy Summit panel talking about how, when your trading partners don't live up to the bargain that you have come together on. So that's a big deal. But the whole issue of this is the gossip. And so the gossip is not true. They are not opening the border in November. And until we get that fly pushed back south, the border will stay closed. And that's a fact, Jack. So that's what I got to say about that.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess the rumors are all coming out of Mexico, really, like the Mexican Cattlemen's Association and all that.
Yeah,
They're
the
saying the,
problem
the
with
border's going to open. I don't, but yeah, Rollins has made it clear that there is no plans
correct.
for that to happen.
Well, the problem is when you get this gossip going. We saw it on the very first hint of gossip in Missouri when they thought there was a screwworm fly. The market fell apart. The people went short. We don't know who or if they are doing that on purpose, but there's always a market fluctuation, not in the cash trade, but on the board. And they, if you're in on the gossip and you want to go short, you can make lots of money, and then it goes back down or back up, and they make money that way too. So I think the whole key here is that we're going to be very careful about opening the border and very strategic about importing live cattle from Mexico. We got to get on top of it because our national herd just cannot afford another hit. We are at the lowest numbers in history. So here we are.
Yeah. One thing that I found pretty interesting, because excuse me, last time we were talking about this kind of stuff, and every time we talk about Mexico, we kind of bring up the cartel, and they're all corrupt, and the government is, just an arm of the cartel. We say all this stuff, but we've never really been down there, and it's always kind of so it's never like, are we right sometimes? But there was a comment that I posted on. I think Jack posted it first, and then I reposted it. But it was a comment on our last video, and comment. You never know exactly where they're come from, but this seemed pretty. The person's YouTube handle is Gendiere con Cabeza. I'm sure that's not what it is, but it's something like that. And he said, it's interesting for me, Chihuahua rancher, to hear you talk about cartel and all the corruption behind beef cattle in Mexico. Much of you both talked is true. I wish our politicians, Mexicans, were more honest and professional on this matter. It's well known that some people said, including the president of Mexico, it appears, that the border will open in November.
Mhm.
Um, so, I mean, that
Well,
just goes to what's going on in Mexico. Like,
yeah.
he's just
And what
telling us
I've
we nailed it, and I agree with him.
what I've learned about it is that the Mexican government, okay, the country of Mexico itself is just like the United States. There is a split in Mexico of nationalists versus globalists, conservatives versus liberals. And the problem with that is they have an addition to that, which is the Mexican cartels. And there's many different groups of cartels that have influence in the government. But from what I understand is the state of Chihuahua is highly, highly conservative, and they're like me and you. And there are a lot of good ranchers, wholesome, good Mexican ranchers that produce great beef, great cattle that want direct trade with the United States, but are unable to have that because of all this corruption that has resulted in the screwworm fly coming north. And it's not just Mexico's fault. The last administration of the United States absolutely dropped the ball on this mitigation of New World screwworm. And so I do have empathy for those Mexican producers who are doing the right thing and want the trade. It's just we have to decide if we're going to keep our national herd safe or not. And I think this administration has made it clear that America comes first, And I support that because we are in grave danger of losing our national herd to many things, including ENGOs, disease, um, federal overreach, loss of land. There's just a lot of complexities that have an influence on why we have so many few cattle. But the whole issue of it is centralization. So we have to, and that centralization comes from global entities. Um, shouldn't have ever been allowed to happen. So we have to figure out how to navigate through all of that. And the first thing we have to do is protect our national herd. It is America first.
Right on. I was just thinking because I'm looking at my Facebook feed, and
Uh-huh.
you one of them videos you said we were going to talk about a conservation thing, and then before we got on here, we didn't say anything about that.
I don't remember what it was.
Well, if you're tuning in to hear what Shad said we were going to talk about it, we forgot.
Oh,
Um,
well, yeah. I tagged you on that post on Facebook.
yeah, I
It was
shared it, and then
Scott
people.
Bessler. Is the Scott Bessler post?
No, you made a video, and you said we're going to be talking about that. Tune in this week.
Yeah, I said this week or next week
Oh,
because
tune
we're
in next
going,
week.
yeah, we're going to be doing some research on that issue that Bessler brought up. And I can't even remember what it is just sitting here. I'd have to go back and look at it.
All right,
Okay, buddy?
tune in next week. I guess there's a lot of talk. We don't get into the grains too much, but there's a lot of talk on Facebook. I just posted this on Facebook. I already got somebody mad at me. But I found it very interesting. It's from Matot Farms, I believe is in Wisconsin. Lots of
Okay.
posts about how Trump's tariffs are hurting the soybean farmer. That's the whole thing. We talked about this big meeting in Arkansas where a bunch of grain farmers said they need government checks or they're going to go broke,
Right.
which is kind of the national narrative, I guess, around farming is that they need a bailout.
Yep.
Um, so anyway, and a lot of the blame has, farmers bring up the tariffs. They say these tariffs are killing us. This horrible prices are all from Trump's tariffs. Which of course, in politics, you're going to get the other side picking up that talking point, and the people who've said bad things about tariffs. Our point on the tariffs from the get-go has been, well, I guess I'll say my point has been, I don't. I'm not going to pretend to understand them like everybody else is pretending they
Right.
understand them or what
Right.
the outcome will be. And so the only thing you could say is only time will tell. But Matot Farms, back to this post, says lots of posts about how Trump's tariffs hurting the soybean farmer, but none of them actually comparing the price. October 7th, 2024, beans on board were $10.02 a bushel. Today, they're $10.19. Want to blame the president for low soybean prices? May of 2023, which was right in the middle of Biden's term, Board of Trade was over 1650. August 2024, with the end of Biden's term, went under. I was throwing that Biden stuff in there. That's not good. Those are my quotes, not his.
Right.
August 2024 went under $10. One president that whole time. Look at basic facts before you just follow what you're told. Do $10 beans suck? Absolutely. It sucked last year too. Great point and great post.
Oh
I guess
yeah,
I
I
didn't
think
fact check that, but I'm guessing he's correct. I doubt he just pulled that out of thin air. But,
well,
you know, then of course someone who probably hates Trump responded. But anyway,
I can't believe there are a lot of farmers who hate Trump. And you really want to I want to
I
put
don't know if there's a lot, but they make their voice heard. I'll say that.
well, I want to put farmers and ranchers and all of us into a conservative type bubble, but we're not all
Oh, that's for sure.
conservative.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not that way.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I feel like the whole state of agriculture. Well, I drove back from Wyoming a week ago, and um, I drove by what was that town you used to live by? Llewellyn.
Llewellyn,
Yeah.
Nebraska.
So I went,
Yeah,
there's an Ogallala, Highway 26 is a diagonal that goes from Scottsbluff down to Ogallala.
right.
And it's really, it is the heart of the sand hills, right? Wouldn't you call it that?
Well, it's the south end of the sand
South of the
hills.
sand hills. But
Yes,
it's, I mean, rough country, bluffs, up and down, especially once you get in close to Ogallala. And that's where you start seeing corn on every flat spot they can find.
right.
It got planted. And that's what people talk about these corn prices and the federal crop insurance. And I'm not exactly sure how that works. I suppose I should do a lot more research and have it all laid out maybe next week. But these guys can get crop insurance to where if their crop fails, they still get paid for 80% of their 5 year average or whatever. However, it's set up. I think it's different for different areas, and there's drought insurance in some places that makes it to where guys can just farm in incredibly dry places, and it's feasible for them to take out the insurance. And if the crop fails, well, oh well. And so this year the crop isn't failing, and guess what? We've got a record amount. Well, that's what USDA is predicting, a record amount. We already have too much apparently, and so the price sucks. And we've had all these companies, and the big push for years and years has been, how do we increase our yield? How do we, every farmer wants to increase their yield because they think
Hmm.
that that means more profits. But now that we've increased our yields constantly, we're farming more ground constantly, with less farmers constantly. And now we're at these prices, and it is what it is.
Well, I
I
think the
guess I don't
key
have
is
an
is
answer, but I think the system, one thing that was really interesting to me, my brother brought up,
okay.
we're it's during harvest now, so then you all load in the pickup at the end of the day and you get stuff moved around. And my brother was talking about how yeah, corn prices suck, but the system, a good example of the system kind of being screwy is when egg prices, they got so high, the fix was to import more eggs, right? So um, we're almost de-incentivizing chicken farmers to have more eggs because we're pushing that price down
Right.
by importing more. Well, guess what eats a lot of corn, right? Chickens.
Right.
I'm
That's right.
guessing. I mean, that's what we fed them
Especially when they're in
when I
bunches
was a
of a
kid.
million head.
Yeah, yeah. And so we're almost disincentivizing chicken farmers to raise chickens because we're importing all these more eggs instead of trying to rebuild the chicken herd or flock or whatever you call it, I guess. And so now we don't have these chicken farmers buying corn. It's just all of those little things add up into and it's the cheap food model, right? And that's what everybody will talk about. We've worked for
Hmm.
years and years and years to try to make cheap food so it's affordable and we can raise a lot of it. Well, now we have these cheap models, and grains aren't worth any money. And I mean, cattle are worth a ton of money because we have pushed out a lot of producers, I guess. Right?
That's what we've
Thoughts?
done. That's what we've done.
It's just the whole efficiency. I mean, you push it, which goes into the yield thing. Like all of agriculture pushes for high efficiency. Everything needs to be more efficient, more efficient, more efficient. Until here we are. We have such an efficient grain system that it's not worth anything anymore.
Yeah. Uh, so what is the correlation between efficiency and centralization?
Oh,
That's what I
it's
want.
yeah, and,
That's what I
and
know.
and concentration, which
Yeah, that's what
leads
I
us
meant.
straight in
Concentration.
to the other thing we were talking about. Another post, I guess, on social media. Been a little, I don't know if it's a slow week as far as ag news, or we just aren't
Hmm.
finding stuff. But I just found stuff on Facebook, and one thing that's really making the rounds is Commissioner Kevin Stocker, who
Hmm.
is the Nebraska some sort of, I don't know who he is. Anyway, he made a post. Black shirt feeders near Hagler in southwest Nebraska has received a new operating permit for 200,000 head to be in the lot at any one time. This is an increase of 50,000 head over the original permit. And the post goes on to talk about how wonderful this is, right?
Hmm.
And to me, and there's a big picture of cattle packed. I mean, it is as far as feedlot goes, there's a lot of them in there in small areas, and it's about as far as you can see. And 200,000 head in one spot is an unbelievable amount of cattle. I think it's 1 square mile, or at least that's what it was when it was going to be 150,000 head.
Right.
And that leads right into what I'm talking about. Like we have pushed so hard for efficiencies and concentrations, and that here we are. And now we're going to celebrate that this how wonderful this feed yard is because operation is this is his words, operation is reshaping agriculture commodity markets in the region. So this is where it's all BS because it says at full capacity, Black Shirt Feeders is projected to purchase 20 million bushels of corn and hundreds of thousands of tons of corn silage and alfalfa each year, making Black Shirt one of the state's largest end users of Nebraska grain and feedstuffs. Um, which I'm not saying that is BS, but it's like,
Right.
well, who would be feeding? Where would that grain go if it wasn't for 200,000 head in one spot? It would be going being spread out throughout different communities all throughout the state.
Correct.
And it goes in like he talks about roller compacted concrete allows for more hygienic practices in pens, which will diminish the presence of flies, dust, and odor. Um,
Well,
you know,
my here's my question. It says the footprint of the feedlot is approximately 50% of the footprint of a traditional dirt floor feedlot of similar capacity due to the innovative pin base of roller compacted concrete. Now, you're going to have to explain that to me because it don't matter if there's roller compacted concrete or if it's dirt. A 1,500 pound steer takes up the same amount of space, does he not?
yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, I guess I
Okay,
don't.
so why is the footprint 50% that of a normal dirt floor
Well,
feed
they
yard?
keep them tighter in there. And I don't know if it's because of manure is easier to clean up when they're tighter in there.
I would love more information on
Yeah.
that. I mean, here I come out of college 30 years ago, and the whole issue coming out of college was humane handling of our animals in agriculture. And now this seems to be the opposite to
Well,
me.
and to me, if you look back, because one thing I've talked about is the hog industry, and I've talked about this a year ago at the IBAN deal. This was part of my thing. IBAN is Independent Beef Association of North Dakota. You talked there just this week, right? You were on
I
Zoom.
did.
I actually
Yes.
flew out there and talked.
Good job.
Flew home with Tough Cooper. Anyway,
Yeah,
anyway, when I was out there, kind of part of my speech, when I started looking in the hog uh, business, Eric Nelson, who's a RCAF guy who feeds cattle in northern northeast Iowa, northwest Iowa, sorry. And I knew he had raised hogs when he was younger, and he talked about he was traveling for work, I think Oklahoma or somewhere, and he went over. This was in the 90s. They were feeding hogs. He went over a hill, and he could just see gigantic hog barn after hog barn after hog barn. And he called his brother, and I think it was his brother, or he called back home and was like, "We got to get out of this business because it's this is, this hog facility thing is taking over." And
hmm,
when I look at this picture, this is what he was looking at. You know what I mean? If you're in the cattle feeding business and they're now putting, they have 50% footprint in their 200,000 head yards. And what this post doesn't mention, there's a lot that this post doesn't mention, but the main thing is that they have a methane digester that they're getting paid millions of dollars for from the carbon market, which is based completely on BS. If you listen to us at all, we've gotten into that a lot.
right.
But I mean, that doesn't even go into it. But if you
Well,
also
and
look at where the hog industry is now, like you talk to any independent hog or person who used to be in the hog business, and they can tell you right where it ended. And it was with those big hog buildings. But now the hog business is in all kinds of trouble because they have this Prop 12 in California because people have decided that they don't want to eat pork that's raised in these confined areas and they want to set the rules on how pork's raised. Well, what happens when, I mean, now we're bragging about how these cattle don't need near as much room and they can be on concrete. And if the other thing, yeah, the other thing that this thing doesn't mention is the plan for this feed yard. I don't know what cattle they're buying now, but the plan when they started was it was going to be 100% beef on dairy. And when you talk about the humane or the animal rights people have a problem with is mainly dairy because they're pulling calves off when they're a day old, so they never get to spend time with their mother, and then they get raised in these little huts.
Mhm.
Well, what happens when California all of a sudden says we aren't buying cattle that are not don't get to spend time with their mother and they don't have enough room, or and I think the same thing with all these cattle buildings too. And I'm not saying I'm for any of that stuff, but when you look at the hog business you can see kind of where it all went wrong. And to me, we're looking at it on this Facebook post right
Well, I
here.
mean, you had already reported that Key Jim, the promoter of this, and I'm sure the highest share owner in this, number one, said it wouldn't work without the methane, without the carbon
I
credits.
will correct, I don't know if I'm correcting that or not. The quote that was said, they were talking about, I don't, I think, so I don't know what he said. The quote was, would this work without the methane digester? He said, or without the carbon market.
Yeah,
He said, absolutely not. I don't
correct.
know if he's saying that the carbon digester, because what they're selling is natural gas. So what's been brought up to me is he was obviously talking about he wouldn't be able to sell the methane natural gas. That wouldn't be economically feasible without the carbon market. And it doesn't mean that the feedlot wouldn't be economically feasible. I just want to be as, you know, I don't want to twist his words because this is what's been brought up. But
Okay.
the carbon, that's the thing about the methane digesters. They're incredibly expensive and inefficient as far as ways of creating natural gas. Um, so that's just something that's been propped up by the heavily subsidized carbon industry.
And so my question remains, is it feasible without the carbon market? Number one. And I lost my train of thought on the second
I
question that I
screwed you
had.
up there, didn't I?
Yeah, you did, but that's okay. I mean, um, listen, when I read this post, it's a good post, and it
Well, no,
really,
it's not. It's full of
well, just wait a minute. If you are just a person that lives in Hagler, Nebraska, Southwest Nebraska, you read this post and it's like, this is awesome. These guys purchasing irrigated acres, they're retiring wells. It says, there will be no net difference in groundwater, but I can imagine how much groundwater that takes per day over the Ogallala Aquifer, which they are draining like crazy. It's going to employ a lot of people. It's going to, create a lot of trade in terms of grain and hay and whatever they pack those pins with locally. I mean, if you read this and you don't know, it looks really good. Like it's going to help
oh
Southwest
yeah.
Nebraska.
So if you're looking for to make a BS post about how wonderful it is, that's what you're saying is great, huh?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is it sounds really good.
Yeah,
And
but
it
what they're
does.
leaving out is um the methane digester, the fact
Well,
that
and
because they kind of made the point like they're gonna be buying all these cattle. This is gonna be great for the cattle
right.
industry. It's
And
great for
that's,
the dairy industry. It ain't great for the
well,
cattle
it's
industry.
great for their own dairy industry because as I don't know if this was quoted, but this obviously is a march to more vertically integrated industry and uniformity. I've said that the beef on dairy for a long time is our march to integration because of the uniformity. That's what they want is uniformity in our industry because it can be mass produced. Uniformity is mass produced. And so That's where this is really headed. And I don't know, does Key Jim have any thoughts on vertical integration, or do you know?
Well, it's obvious. It's 200,000 head that are completely vertically integrated, right? From birth
I'm just
to
trying not
slaughter,
I'm not
100% controlled by this
yeah.
corporation.
I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. I just want to know the answers.
But we talk about dairy and and I'm talking about hogs, but you talk about the other industry that has been highly concentrated during
Sure.
our lifetimes is the dairy industry. And how have they done it? They've taken small dairies all throughout the country and they've broke them,
Absolutely.
really. They're out of business and they put them in these gigantic ones, all, in very few, way fewer places,
Yes.
much bigger dairies, and the concentration of that. And a lot of, I think J.R. Burdick just put a post
Yes.
about this where this methane, that's what this methane digestion leads to. The more you have, the more animals you have in the smaller area, the better that is for this carbon market.
Correct.
And so what you're doing is you're pushing a concentrated industry. You're pushing the industries to be more concentrated. And what we
So
talk
much.
about every week, or we should quote it every single time. Over the last 5 years, we lost 140,000 small farms and ranches. 107,000 of them were beef cattle farms and ranches. And so when this guy posts like, "Oh, isn't this wonderful?
Yeah.
200,000 head in one spot." We've lost 107,000 individual small beef producers in the last 5 years. It's not wonderful. It's horrible. I mean, you think about how many families could have their own independent operation
Yes.
instead of building a 200,000 head feedlot, and then but I think they're building like trailer house park or something. They're putting up a whole housing development for these employees that they're going to pay, you know. I mean, they're making millions and millions just on the methane carbon BS. Who knows what they're going to pay? I mean, they're looking for the whole goal of these corporations is not to place to raise, in agriculture, we want a place to raise our family and raise our create values in our kids and all of these things. Those guys want to make profit and bring in the lowest, the least they can pay their employees and the highest profits they can get. Um, and I mean that's what has goes into everything we've talked about today. It's
Well,
what's killing family farms and ranches.
absolutely. And J.R. Burdick made a great point the other day. He said we're centralizing so much that the beef or the milk isn't going to be the matter. It's not going to be the issue. It's going to be how to produce as much methane as we can, which would override the milk or the beef, right? And that I thought that was a great point because of the subsidies. So I will say this, I've got independent dairy friends that are complaining about how, you have to abide by the rules, DFA's rules, or get out of the market. And I can tell you that my wife is a CPA in a dairy community, and they are out of small independent dairies, basically. I mean, I think like when we first got married, they had maybe like 131, 40 dairy clients, and they're down to 30, you know. I think it's a big deal. And that's just the fruit of concentration. Somebody in that post was pointing out about how many independent feeders are left. Even in Nebraska, the land of corn and water, there's no independent feeders left because there's no
There
competition.
are. I
There
wouldn't say
are,
no. There's
if
some
there
in
are,
over by me up
well, I know, but you
northeast. But yeah, I mean
overall,
107,000. I mean, yeah, the numbers ain't
exactly,
lying. They're definitely very
exactly.
few. Um,
So,
and
mm,
yeah, it goes to, you want to brag about that picture. There's nothing there to brag about. That's I guess the main point. And this concentration.
it is a incredibly, I mean, what a massive amount of cattle and concrete. I mean,
Yeah. And the other thing is they want to talk about how eco-friendly it is. When this first came out, it was in a magazine, the most eco-friendly feedlot ever. You're building it. where you have to, the only way to grow corn is to suck water out of the ground with big diesel. A lot of them irrigation units use diesel motors. It's like, I think about, you want to talk about eco-friendly. When I grew up, my family, we fed cattle out in small little feedlots. We had like a 300 head capacity, and they ate everything that was across the fence. I mean, we raised everything that we fed them across the fence. There was no trucks hauling in grain. There was no irrigation pumping water.
Mhm.
I mean, you want to talk about eco-friendly, and it was 300 head. You talk about, I mean, yeah, it's
Every single rancher in my country in southeast Colorado, even on our, we have a small feed yard with concrete bunks there at my folks' place. The neighbors up the road did. The next neighbors up the road have the same thing, and all of those little feed yards, because everybody held their calves over and fed them, right, or bought a few extra and fed them, and now those little feedlots, we could hold about 300 head, I think, in ours, and it just grows weeds now. I mean, I just put a
yeah,
few calves in there to keep the weeds down in the summer, but I mean, it's that way all over the nation. You go down into the Arkansas River Valley, and all of those old farms that have still produce a lot of alfalfa and corn, they all have a feed yard sitting there, and some of them are dang nice, just sitting empty, growing up
yeah,
weeds.
yeah. And you talk about this concentration and what that does. Well, NCBA is out now trying to push this drought idea. The only reason we're out of cattle is because we had a drought in the last
Yeah,
couple of years. Well, what about the 107,000 independent producers that are
exactly.
no longer producing? If they're cow calf people and they liquidated their herds and, people didn't pick it up, their cows went to slaughter and the heifers went to slaughter and nobody was keeping cows. So we have a smaller herd because they liquidated. But you
That's
get into
exactly
this
right.
concentration deal. Well, what happens with weather issues? Like you're describing concrete bunks on up and down the roads is the same thing that's happening here. So that's southeast Colorado to Iowa,
Sure.
and we know they had them in Illinois, Wisconsin, all throughout the country, all of these. And so when you had these weather events, like what's going to happen when there's a drought in Hagler, Nebraska, or the western Nebraska? Well, they're not going to be able to grow any corn. And what's going to happen if they have one of these events like happened in Kansas a few years ago or a couple years ago with all them dead cattle? Remember that there was
With the
a
heat,
weather event and they all died from the heat. Like what happens if 25% of the cattle die? Could you imagine that? That'd be 50,000 head. You
that's
know?
one thing that nobody ever touches on. Like in the Arkansas River Valley, we used to have a big dog food plant that they'd go around to these feed yards and pick up these dead calves because you're going to have a death loss. I
Hmm.
mean, that's just part of the
Yeah,
business.
we had weather events where we my
Yeah,
my dad would always describe it was a disaster.
it was a
We had
disaster.
heat events and we had cold events that
Yeah.
killed cattle.
So what do they do now with all those dead cattle? I mean, where are they
Yeah.
going with them?
And what happens when we have, just a handful? It goes into the beef alliance, right? There's what, six or seven feed yards that control, 30 to 40% of the all the beef
Right,
cattle being fed in the country.
right.
What happens when a weather event hits? Well, it goes into that dairy. Remember that dairy a few years ago that caught on fire? Everything was
Yep.
indoor and the whole thing
Blew
kind of
up.
exploded. And
Yeah.
how many cattle died?
Like
I mean, tens of.
tens of thousands,
Yeah,
like
that's what I was gonna think.
13,000
I don't know.
head.
I don't want to say it wrong, but it
I don't know what
was
it was, but it was a
unbelievable
massive
amount.
amount. I
Yeah.
mean, what happens? I mean, what about these little calves that they're raising for the Beef on Dairy project? Listen, I handle a lot of light calves. I know how hard it is to keep them alive. Nobody talks about that.
And those
Anyway,
were calves off their mother that actually nursed and got, colostrum and all that stuff.
mhm.
When you put them on a bucket day one, I think it's a lot tougher to keep them alive.
Yeah, I mean, there's some major questions in this whole deal. I think it's a sad deal. Just more vertical integration, and uh, I don't know where are people like me. Where are we headed in my business? Am I headed out? I I feel like it. I feel like that's I can't compete on the land issue, so I can't increase my herd size. It's hard to find access to capital. I'm one of the lucky ones that has access to have some borrowing power because of my debt situation. So not everybody's like that. I mean, I honestly, as a producer, I feel very shackled, and I have more opportunity than most people. And I can remember my dad in the old days. He said, "Shad, the rich are going to get richer, and the poor are going to get poorer. The bigger are going to get bigger, the smaller are going to go out." I remember him saying that, and I just feel like I'm living in that moment now.
Yeah, just because, um, just to explain, right? You're a stocker guy, so you have to buy cattle. So
Yes, I buy cattle.
for somebody who, we hear about record cattle prices, and it isn't the best for people who have to buy them and not knowing where it's going to be in a year, right?
Well, I think that's the key. I mean,
Yeah, if we knew
we
where it was going to be in a year.
it's a tired market. The market has been high for a very long time. And so when you, like last year, you gave a certain amount for the calves and you could have locked a great profit in and did. Most people did, and that was good. But then this year, when you had to rebuy, you bought at a higher level, your inputs are increasing, and so your profit isn't what it was on that turn year, what I call a turn year. And so you have to be very careful. I mean, it is a dangerous game. It is a dangerous game. And if you, like a normal guy, let's say 2 years ago, if you run 1,000 head of calves, let's say a 3 or 4 weight steer cost you $1,000 and you put $500 or $600 into him and you made money, right? Well, now these calves are costing $2,000 off the cow. And if you buy 1,000 of them, look at the money that you're doubling your buy cost. Your inputs have gone up by at least 25%. The access to the capital is was costing you 8% this year. These are massive numbers. My interest bill this year was double than it was last year on less cattle, almost double on less cattle. And these are issues we have to be concerned with in our budgeting, especially as small producers. A big producer, a volume producer, if you run 10 or 20,000 head of cattle and you make $10, you're making a pretty decent profit for a family. But if you run an 800 or 500 or 1,000 and you're making $20 a head profit, it ain't enough, right? It's a volume game. And that's really where the sadness is because the volume game has led to concentration. Part of the reason we are so concentrated.
Yeah, and
So,
it almost looks like, we talk about independent producers were going out of business 5 years ago because prices were so low, and with COVID and the beef fire and the beef plant fire and
yep,
that kind of things. And now prices are so high,
right,
and it's like people like you aren't able to buy cattle. So,
right.
and that's where it's almost like Packers were like, well, we weren't able to break them all at the low prices. Maybe we
Well, we're
can
going to
get
do it on
some
this
out at the
round.
high prices. But I mean, and there you go, because um, that outfit in Hagler, Nebraska ain't having trouble buying cattle,
Nope,
right?
that's
Because
right.
they are so big. Like you said, the same guy that owns that place or runs that place runs a thousand or 100,000 head by your that where you in Colorado.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so I mean they're just a massive corporation.
Correct.
But I mean, and it ain't an easy. These aren't easy issues either because you talk how we talked going in. The farm. These farmers just wanted to plant more and more corn, and part of that is the subsidy issue with that
Yep,
and
it sure
subsidized
is.
crop insurance. But right now we're like, we need to build this cattle herd, right? We want a bigger cattle herd because we want more producers on the land, all that kind of stuff. But at what point are we going to be, some people are, I've heard, which makes sense. Like, why do we want a bigger cattle herd? We're making more money than we have ever made as far as cow calf guys. So why would we want to retain, why do we want to push this idea for a larger cattle herd. And I think so. There is kind of a slippery slope there.
No, there's a balancing. There's
Yeah, balancing act. That's what I'm.
a balancing point. But the key here is that we have to keep in mind that everybody forgets about because we're always thinking about the dollar is our national security. That's the key. Because if we don't have enough food to feed this nation, have enough beef, meat, produce to feed our nation, then it becomes a national security threat. And what we learned in COVID was that the concentration led to empty shelves in every store across America. They were burying your freaking vegetables. They were killing your chickens. They were killing your hogs. They wanted to kill the harvest ready cattle. They what we were headed for was that. And if we didn't learn the dangers of concentration during that period, Jim, we'll never learn from it. And, AJ had a great quote at a panel that he sat on recently, AJ Richards, and he said, the tool of starvation has been used by communists for centuries.
Yeah. There's
And
something about like
that's,
that's the first tool, right? Like
that
they
is
take
the
away the
first
food,
tool.
make people hungry, and
Control
then
the
they're going to
food,
look to the
control the
government,
people,
right? Yeah.
right? Control the food, control the people. So that is the danger nobody's talking about with a small
Well,
herd.
somebody's talking about it.
Yeah, we are.
Well, did you see the Brooke Rollins? Brooke Rollins
Brooke
update.
Rollins,
She brought
yeah,
that up
she
on the
she absolutely did, and I thank Brooke Rollins for that because that was a pivotal moment for me in my consideration for her because she said it. I mean, she said we have offshored our food production for far too long. Since 2023, I don't know if people know this, we are a net importer of food, which means we depend on other countries for our food supply. This is the land of the free, the home of the brave, the greatest country that was ever on the face of the earth, and we are depending on other countries for our food supply, and it's concentrated production and global cartel corporations that have led us to this. And we are in a dangerous position. I say, let's produce more.
yeah,
Let's
and that
get more
was the
people.
most refreshing
It
clip I've
was.
seen. Brooke Rollins
Thank you,
saying kind
Secretary
of
Rollins.
exactly what Shad always talks about.
Yeah.
But then that goes into what we're talking about with we want to increase the herd size. We're not wanting to overrun the market. We're wanting to cut imports, right? Like we're importing all of this beef. You just said we're a
Yes.
net importer. Like the goal with growing the cattle herd has to be to reduce imports.
We can feed ourselves and produce everything right here in America and then export that overflow. We've done it all these
Right.
years until 2023. But we're in a dangerous position and you know, there's a lot of countries that don't like us. And we got to I just think we have to be very careful and I think this is the leading reason why we got to get more people back on the land and cut out, use the Packers and Stockyards Act, use the Sherman Antitrust, the Clayton Antitrust Act to break these big conglomerates up. But no, we have Congress over here allowing acquisitions and mergers of these mega companies like they did with JBS to control our food supply. JBS is out there laughing at us,
And
and now
Tyson,
JBS wants to partner up and show us how to produce and talk about American production. I'm tired of that.
just this week, I think Tyson Foods paid 85 million price fixing to get a price fixing lawsuit settled. I mean, and that's yearly. They do that. I mean, we've lost track. We've lost track how many price fixing Tyson's had through chickens and hogs, and well, now they're cattle ones going through. Um, yeah, it just never ends with them, and
It
and
never
it goes
ends.
back to talking about AJ Richards. When we say AJ, he had a post this week that talked about NCBA and the beef checkoff and everything we're talking about now, imports, exports, this whole system that's been set up kind of ass backwards because it's all set up to benefit this concentration and these corporations. They have Key Jim on their cattleman to cattleman, the guy who's
Yeah.
running these massive feedlots
Yeah.
and concentrating everything. They've got him on the TV show once a month or whatever. Um, and they love it. They're promoting beef on dairy. They're talking about how the only reason we don't have enough cattle is because of the drought. All of this stuff. We have this organization that has the fanciest office in DC, rooftop patio and bar up there. They throw parties. It's great. And that has who's been the driving force of the cattle industry for so long. But the reason Brooke Rollins is saying the things she is because they, that is not NCBA messaging, and it's almost like we can be at a turning point if we can keep this pressure up. And this checkoff deal, what AJ was talking about in that thing, is that we have propped up those people that have pushed us to this point, and they aren't pushing us to a point of highest. People will say, "Well, look at our prices, how wonderful everything is," but what it is look at how many producers are there. Who do they work for? They work for the concentration and the corporations, and
We call it
the result,
serfdom.
right? And what they've done over the past 5 years is not prop up prices. They've gotten rid of 107,000 independent
Listen,
small producers.
I'm not gonna sit here and cut any organization down. They know what my thoughts are,
I will.
but I'm gonna tell you something. The American people need to know where they're being led, and where they've been led is less farmers and ranchers on the land, higher concentration, a dangerous food supply, net importer of our food system. Um, and then we have the same organization partnering up with people who have said that cattle are killing the planet. They have speakers at their convention that have done studies, red meat studies on Americans that say we should be eating way less meat. And then that infiltration is published by the Public Library of Science, which is owned by the very first guy that created Impossible Foods, who is anti-beef and says we will be eating no meat, no natural meat in the future. I mean, you have the freedom to support anybody you want, any group, any organization you want. But I don't know how many more times these organizations can side up with anti-American, America last sentiment people. I don't know why we are continuing to support this. It is driving me insane.
Well, it's the truth is coming out, and they're getting less and less support. I believe.
I don't know if they're getting less and less support. They're getting a lot more money of my checkoff dollar. I mean, they're
Yeah.
still getting millions and millions of our checkoff dollars, and I don't care what anybody says. Where you have money, you have power, because
Right.
that money pays
And
for the power.
that is the thing. Like people will be like, "Well, how are they controlling everything? How do they get there?" Well, we're forced to pay them millions
Yeah,
of dollars every year, and they
absolutely.
control the entire system. So that is real, and that was the point, AJ's point. And he was dead on, and it was great to see. And then that video, I was like, I'm glad he's on our side. You know what I mean? Like he knows how to get stuff out there. It's been shared a ton. It was
Well, I think, Jim, it
well
just,
put out, clear.
yeah, it was very clear and concise. But I think we're just to the point where um, I don't, I don't care what political group you belong to. We're either going to have to pick a side, one side or the other. And you're either going to pick the American side or you're going to pick the anti-American side. And if we pick the American side, we're going to promote our American product first and our American producers. And that's where we have to be. Otherwise, we are on the verge of losing this whole beautiful system that was created by our forefathers so many, you know, 2 centuries ago. It's scary. And I feel sorry for the kids that are coming behind us. If me and you don't get this hashed out, they're in trouble. Sorry.
Right on. Me and you got to get it hashed out. Once a week, we're here doing it. Oh man. Well, we got that covered. I don't know what else you got.
I don't
We like
really
to
have.
talk. What's going on in the world? Well, I saw you posted about Zach Bryan. You said, "Who's Zach Bryan?"
Who is Zach Bryan? I never even
He's
heard
a
of him
singer.
before.
So I got a 15-year-old daughter. I've been to a Zach Bryan concert.
Oh
Took her
my
to a
God.
Zach Bryan concert.
I don't know.
Everybody's mad. So if you don't know, he's a I guess he's a country singer. He's not like somebody you're going to hear on the radio, I don't think. But he said something. Had a song that had some comment about ice in it, and everybody's wound up. I don't know. I feel like people
Yeah.
take
Appa-
that. The best singers have terrible politics. I think all the time. Bruce
mm,
Springsteen's practically a communist. I'm not
yeah,
going to
but
I don't quit listening to people because they're idiots. Because most artists are idiots,
well, that's
and they're
exactly
good
so
at it.
yeah, the other night I went to a cowboy poetry deal, and believe it or not, in the cowboy poetry and cowboy music genre, there are artsy. What one of the performers told me from with in our discussion backstage the other night, he's like, "Yeah, I don't get a lot invited to a lot of these poetry gatherings because there's a lot of artsy fartsy people that are leftists."
Hmm.
And I'm like, even in the cowboy poetry deal, and he's like, "Yeah, there
Well, the
sure
probably
is."
the people putting on the events
It
that,
is. It's
yeah,
the people putting
I
on
could
the
see
events.
that.
I don't get invited to any of them, probably because they know my politics. I don't know why. Maybe I'm not that good of a poet, but I will be at the Red Steagall Cowboy Gathering at the end of the month as an invited poet, and I'm going to get to do some poetry with some of the big dogs out there. So that's pretty exciting,
Right on. So, yeah, see,
right?
you're a artsy fartsy.
I'm not really artsy fartsy, but I can
Well, you got
write
to be a
pretty good.
lib to be artsy fartsy, right?
Huh?
You got to be truly be artsy fartsy. You have to be a liberal.
Yeah, and I'm
Apparently,
not.
I don't know. You know
I'm
what's
not.
crazy to me? Like Steve Earle, he is a straight up communist. I think he said like he believes Steve Earle, if you're not familiar, Copperhead Road, Guitar
Yeah,
Town.
yeah.
Steve Earle wrote a song about a terrorist right after 9/11, like praising him because he was an American
Now,
and he got caught over in Afghanistan, and I'm not sure if they killed him or what the deal was, but
so the
Steve
irony
Earle
is
was real
these.
sad about this guy. I mean, he's the worst, but I'm still listening to Copperhead Road,
Well,
Guitar Town.
the irony is that these anti-American communists believe in that ideology, and
Oh, I
yet
know.
they make money on the capitalistic system.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
know.
irony, right?
I know.
Uh,
Who was it? There was someone was talking about how their people were so oppressed and then someone took it and put the in the caption how much they made a year. You know,
yeah.
it's like kind of losing your argument there when you.
Uh,
Anyway,
oh, I'm going to be a little more artsy fartsy, but I will never be a leftist, and I will always be a conservative, a constitutional conservative, and America first. And I ain't making no apologies for it.
all right, all the way to the gallows.
All the way to the gallows if need be.
All right, is that it?
Okay,
I'll be
buddy.
at. So you talked about. I'll be in Deer Lodge, Montana, November 8th. You got any other
Okay.
events? I'm at the Rocky
Yeah,
Mountain
I have.
Stock Growers. If you, I don't know. I guess I need to ask them if people can come, but look them up.
Um, cool. I do have an event tonight that I have to speak at via Zoom. Oklahoma Independent Stock Growers is meeting with legislators at the Capitol. I will be speaking at that. Um, um, in about 10 days, 10 or no, 2 weeks, I'll be flying to New York. I have an interview on John Stossel TV. Don't know how that's going to go. And then we had to cancel the Donna Conley event in Missouri. She
Oh
had to
yes.
cancel it. Her barn burned down and they're having trouble, rebuilding. You know how that is. And she called and said, "Well, what do you think about it?" And I said, "I can go either way, but if you want to have a great event, put it off for 6 months. We'll get some more speakers together and we'll just come together and have a summit that teaches everybody everything they need to know about what's going on." And so that's what she decided to do.
Well, that's great. I mean,
I feel
that's not
bad.
great.
Well,
It's
I
a
feel
bummer.
bad
It's a
for her
total
that her
bummer. It was going
barn.
to be a neat event. Yeah, and I.
Yeah, well, I mean, her barn and her house was in her barn, and it all burned down.
Oh,
She
geez.
told me she lost everything, which you have to remember. She lost her husband about 5 or 6
Right.
months ago
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
cancer, so she's gone through a lot, and I really feel sorry for her. But she's a good woman, and she loves liberty and freedom, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. The Angus convention, it was going to correlate with that.
Correct.
And I was talking the Angus convention. I was like, how do we help you guys, these independent guys, get on that board? But then I was talking to Brian Palmer, and he was like, well, it's actually just the delegates. So they have to, I don't know how it all worked, but they have to go schmooze the delegates apparently.
I'm anxious to see how that pans out. I've talked to Bryan a couple times too, and I didn't really like what he had to say, but
What do you
I
mean
guess.
about that deal?
Well, yeah, I mean,
You mean you don't, you're not hopeful on getting rid of the hierarchy at the Angus Association?
I don't care who the Angus people pick. I do not give two craps about that, but I do love these people fighting for liberty
Well,
and doing the
yeah.
right thing within
Don't
that
you think they should
organization.
pick the independent-minded
Of course
people?
I think they
So you
should.
do care about it.
Well, I do care, but the Angus Association has no effect on my life. I'm not a
Yeah.
joiner that way.
Well, if I saw NCBA will pay for you to go down there,
Yeah,
right?
I saw that
They'll
too.
give you a grant to go to
I didn't
travel to the
realize that
Angus
I was
convention.
paying for grants for personal schools for these whoever wants to
Oh, you're
go.
paying for way worse than that. I'll
I
tell you that
know.
much.
I know. All
All
right.
right, folks. See you next week.
Adios.